Hello and welcome to Gravitas Wins Conversations. We live in a polarized world, which is getting more and more polarized every day. I often wonder, are we becoming polarized because we are not talking to others? Or is it because we are polarized we are not talking to others? In either of the cases, talking to people so as to understand their point of view is extremely important. To explore this further, I'm talking to Ranjita, a trainer in non-violence communication. She coaches people in applying the principles of non-violent communications. I hope to learn from her today on this topic more. Hello, Ranjita. Welcome to the conversations.
Yeah. Hi, Joseph. Thanks so much for having me here.
Welcome. Let's start with this. What is non-violent communication? What are its origins? How did it start?
So, what is nonviolent communication? Of course, there's a lot to explore in that, and maybe I'll give you like a quick 1 minute intro. Nonviolent communication is essentially a framework that supports us in returning to our capacity for compassion and empathy,
Hmm.
especially when things get tough. The thing is, often a lot of us find it easy to be compassionate, to respond with empathy when it comes to when the situation isn't so stressful. But
Hmm.
sometimes things get stressful, and by stressful, I mean it could be anything like a recurring conflict with a loved one, or maybe having to give feedback to a peer or a superior at work. These are situations where there's more stress than we can handle. We get overwhelmed, and all of a sudden we're like, shit, what do I do now? What is the empathetic response in this situation? So, NVC in a way gives us a framework to return to our capacity for empathy, because I believe every single one of us has this capacity, and it's just that in some moments we don't have access to this capacity. That's how I describe NVC.
Okay. You said it's a framework. What does it mean? Does it have certain kind of principles? What is a framework in this particular sense?
Yeah. So, for anyone who's done a very basic introduction to NVC, will be aware of something we call the four-step framework, which is essentially four places in which I can choose to put my attention. And this four-step framework, I won't go into it too much, but I'll explain it a little bit. We start with observations. That is, instead of evaluating, analyzing, and judging, can I bring my attention
Hmm.
to the facts, what happened? And the next step is the feelings. And when I say feeling, instead of putting my attention on what I think you did, can I put my attention on how I feel in relation to what I experienced, to what actually happened? And then we connect it to our needs. So when I experience any feeling, it's I in the NVC framework we talk about feelings being feedback about our needs. So the question I like to ask myself is, when I feel angry, what need is this feeling telling me about? When I feel
Hmm.
happy, what need is this feeling telling me about? And then once I've identified my need, what is it that I'm really wanting in this situation? What is a need, a quality that I'm looking for in this situation? Once I've identified that, I can actually say, okay, now I know what I'm looking for, what I'm wishing would happen, what I'm hoping for, and what action can I take to move towards that. And this fourth step is something we call requests. That is, can
Hmm.
we move towards action? Is there an action I can take? Is there an action I can ask somebody to take so that my need can be met? So, this is the four-step framework. And of course, it's not just this, there's a whole bunch of underlying principles that form the practice of NVC itself, what NVC can look like in our lives.
Okay, thanks for that. Of course, there's quite a lot that we can branch out from the four principles that you talked about, the pillars that you talked about. Uh, why is it called non-violent?
Yeah. So Marshall Rosenberg, who was the psychologist who created this framework, was influenced by the work of Mahatma Gandhi. And this is one of the reasons why it's called nonviolent communication, because he was very influenced by Gandhi's ahimsa, the principle of
Hmm.
ahimsa. And the other thing is also that Marshall talked about, we often think about violence as originating in physical actions. So for many of
Hmm.
us, violence can mean somebody is hitting someone else. somebody is, killing someone else. But
Mm,
the idea is also to bring the attention back to where is violence born. Where, it's highly unlikely I'm going to think of hitting you, because there's somewhere it's born within me. It begins in
mm,
how I think, it begins in how I see you, it begins in how we communicate. So non-violence is also, I think it's about bringing the attention back to the ways in which our communication can be violent, because we're sort of, these whole ideas of sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never hurt me. But the truth is, the way we communicate with each other can hurt. It
mm,
can create disconnection. It can impact other people in ways that are not very, yeah, not very nice.
mm.
So, non-violent communication is also a way to bring the attention back to how can our communication, instead of creating more division, how can it create more connection between us?
Okay. I am reminded of an ancient Tamil literature. There is something called Kural, Tirukural, and in that it's I think 2,000 years old. And one of the Kural it says, uh, the scar because of a fire
Mm,
it can be healed, but scar because of words can never be healed.
yeah.
So, from what you are saying, nonviolent communication, it's kind of what I visualize as you are speaking is that there is thinking in front of, or rather, it is originating. The thinking leads to communication, and that communication might lead to the violence in physical space. So, most often we focus on the physical aspect of it, and our justice system, law and order,
Mhm.
everything is around that physical action. But where is it coming from? Maybe it is coming from the communication. Where is it coming from? It may be coming from the thinking perspective. So that is where you are communicating with those four principles that you talked about.
Yeah,
And one of the things that you talked about, the first one is observing and feeling, and which are all mine. And then comes
yeah,
the action,
yeah.
is what you are saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting you say that, because it's also nonviolent communication. It's not just about communication, because for us,
Hmm.
communication can mean the actual words I'm putting out when I'm in a conversation with you. But NDC is also about finding a very different way of relating to ourselves and the world, finding ways of relating to ourselves and the world with more compassion.
Hmm.
So in that sense, it's also, it's not just a set of skills, though it does work at the skill level. But I find that every time I'm choosing to practice any of these skills, anytime I'm choosing to, say, okay, here, let me try this out, how can I say this with more empathy, I'm also slowly transforming my consciousness, my perspective of
Hmm.
things. So it's also
Hmm.
about how we see ourselves and other people, not just about the words we say.
Hmm. When we are talking about leadership, especially now, we often use compassion, sympathy, and empathy. And many a times we don't know the difference. At least I don't know the difference. So, how would you explain these three terms: compassion, sympathy, and empathy?
So, in sympathy, and I'll try and explain how I see them differently. So, sympathy for
Hmm.
me has this element of "oh, poor you," where
Hmm.
it's a little bit of pity mixed in. There's a bit of sadness and there's a bit of pity, and it's almost like, "oh, so sad." When I say something like that, I might be expressing, my sympathy with you, but the effect for me when somebody expresses their sympathy is almost like somebody standing far away and talking to me,
Hmm.
and they're
Hmm.
trying to say
Hmm.
it's so sad. Empathy is sort of, just to take this analogy of standing far away, empathy is something like I'm standing beside you, I'm here solidly beside you. So empathy
Mhm.
is really about being able to connect with what somebody else is experiencing. Now, it doesn't mean I have to have experienced this in my life. It doesn't mean I have to have
Hmm.
experienced the exact same situation in my life. It means that in this moment, can I just, try and imagine what it might be like to be you, Joseph? Yeah,
Hmm.
that's what empathy is about. And compassion, the way I understand it, is about moving into action. It's a desire to make
Hmm.
things better for the other person.
Hmm.
The thing is, for me, compassion is more like a, at least for me, compassion is more like an overall state. or the way I look at people around me. And empathy is about in this moment, it's about making that connection in this moment. So
Okay,
that for
okay,
me would be the difference.
okay. Before we go any further, how did you come into NVC?
So I used to work in the communications industry. I was a journalist, so I kind of assumed that I knew how to communicate. But the thing is, I knew
Mhm.
how to communicate in a certain way.
Mm.
I knew how to communicate when it came to breaking stories, when it came to writing up interviews, things like that. I knew how to communicate that. But it was through discovering NVC that I actually realized that there were deeper layers of communication that I was totally unfamiliar with. What do I do with my feelings? How do I talk about
Mm.
them? How do I ask for what I want? How do I bring up topics that can be possibly be a little, thorny or challenging? How can I do all of these? So that's so I discovered NVC around sometime in 2012, 2011 or 2012, when there was a 2 day workshop being organized in Bangalore. And so I went to this NVC workshop. And there was something about it that resonated with me. I wasn't able to put my finger on what I liked about it, but I liked it. And then I
Mm.
went to another event that was, this was a 5 day residential event, something called the NDC conventions that were held every year in the country until COVID happened. I think it happened for about 9, 10 years in a row. And when I went to this event, I think what I was struck by was how different it was compared to the world I was living in. Because here
Mhm.
we had a group of 100 plus practitioners, all of us trying to learn and apply NBC. And it's almost like I could feel the absence of judgment. Or
Mm.
there was space for people to be who they wanted to be. There was acceptance, there was a lot of affection. There wasn't a shrinking away from talking about difficult things, but it was done with a lot of care. So something about that stayed with me. And I think a couple of years down the line, I was experiencing a very difficult situation at work. And I think until then, I hadn't realized how much of an impact NVC had made in my life, because I was actually able to talk about what wasn't working for me. I was able to talk
Mm.
about without villainizing the other person. I was able to say, this is not working for me. I was able to dig my heels in, trust that my needs matter, and say, hey, you know what, you need to do something about it, which is something sort of, I can't imagine a me maybe 10 years before that being able to do. So that was, I think, for me, a little bit of a turning point. And I decided, wow, if it's made so much of an impact to my life, I want to be able to share it with others. So I started gradually sharing NVC, very informally to start with, and then I registered to be a certification candidate. And then this year, I took the leap into doing NVC work full time. So yeah, that's pretty much been my journey with NVC.
Thanks for sharing your story, and all the best for your coaching as well. And as you said, I'm imagining, I mean, some of the points that you talked about, stressful events and the care that others would share. And I am imagining as a father, as the CTO of an organization, and also as a conscious citizen in a society, in all the other three dimensions, all these three dimensions, this is our day to day experience. There are stressful events where I want to show care, but I don't know how to do it. I don't even know, like as you said, the other party, I have either hurt their feelings or offended their feelings, and they are not even opening what they are expecting out of me. So, what I want to do, Ranjita, if you would give me your permission, now, as a son, I have a 13-year son, old son. As a son, and I want to take this particular relation. As a father, how can I apply NVC with him? And how can I tell him, hey, this is NVC. Anytime you feel there's a stress with me, this is how you can approach it. And this is what you can do with me. How can I do that?
Yeah. Um, So there's two ways of doing this. One is, of course, the traditional workshop. I won't say traditional. One is the more available workshop method where you go to a workshop where you learn the skills and you start applying it in your family. The other is to approach it through by creating sets of agreements around what you'll do when something uncomfortable happens. So,
Hmm.
what this could look like is to maybe building a vocabulary of feelings and needs with your children that you as a family participate in together, and maybe having a set of agreements. And when I say agreements, these are very different from rules. This is about checking in with every member of the family. How would it be with for you to do that? Yeah, because we want
Hmm.
people to do this because they're willing, not because they think my dad wants me to do it, because then they're less likely to be connected to what they're doing. So one way to do this could be to, once you introduce the feelings and the needs, and there are a whole bunch of resources out there. Perhaps I could share some links with you after our conversation that are
Yes.
that work really well with children, that have illustrations on them, so that
Mm.
children can understand and connect with these ideas that are being expressed. And to say, and what would your agreements look like? It could be sitting down to have a conversation with your family and saying, when something uncomfortable happens, what are the ways in which we do want to respond?
Mm.
And what are the
Mm.
ways in which we don't want to respond? And to
Hmm.
generate this among yourselves as a family, to say, this is what we'd like to do, this is what we'd not like to do, what is the kind of support you like when you feel stressed out, and to have this as a list of shared agreements. Excuse me. Not as a set of rules which will be held up to you to say, oh, look, you promised you'd do this and you won't, because this isn't about guilt tripping. It's really about connecting from the heart. But to say,
Mm.
here, this is sort of a map that we can follow, because I notice when I'm stressed, I feel lost. I kind of don't have an idea of what I can do to address the
Hmm.
situation. And it helps to have this set of agreements as a ready reference. And then I can look at it and go, oh, that's something I could do. So, to give you an example, I worked with a school in Bangalore called ILM Montessori, where one of the parents is an NVC practitioner, and who also is a trustee of the school. And he spent some time talking to the students of one of the grades. What do we do? How do we want to behave with each other in this class? And the students
Hmm.
themselves came up with things like, we don't want to hit each other, we don't want to raise
Mm.
our voices. And this came from the
Mm.
children, right? The
Mm.
only
Mm.
direction being offered by the parent here is to ask the questions and invite reflections. And what do we want to do when so something similar could be, what do we want to do when we're stressed? Maybe it means it's perfectly okay for any of us to say, hey, I need a 10-minute break because I'm feeling stressed now. I'd like to
Mm.
take a
Mm.
walk, self connect, and come back.
Mm.
Yeah. Or to say, or maybe it's okay for any of us to ask for support when we're feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. You know what? I'm feeling overwhelmed. Would you listen to me
Mm.
for the next 5 or 10 minutes? So this could be a way of really creating a set of agreements that'll be supportive to every single person in the family. And the beauty of doing this is that it offers everyone the context for these actions when they happen later. Because
Mm. Mm.
when we're in a stressful situation and one of us asks for a timeout, it's
Mm.
very easy for the others to misinterpret it, because already emotions are high, we're
Mm.
charged up, the mind is making a lot of meaning out of what we're seeing. But if we have this context that says, hey, we've agreed that if we're overwhelmed, it's okay to take a 5-minute break, they know I'm doing it for my self connection, right? So that's crystal clear. So perhaps a
Mm.
set of agreements like this is a great way to get started.
Wonderful.
How's that for
So,
you? How's the idea?
yeah, like so. What I let me summarize it to see whether I'm getting it properly. So, what I'm hearing is, even before any of these charged emotions and charged stressful situations would arise, you sit down and say, hey, if something were to happen like this, we are going to behave in this particular fashion. I'm going to ask for a timeout. You can ask for a timeout. And I would give you that space. If you say, I want to take a walk, I would let you do that. When we have agreed like that, then when the situation happens, and if the other party says, hey, you know what, timeout, I want this, we already talked about it.
Yeah.
I could still be a bad parent and not provide it, but if I'm really, really careful and if I am really caring for the relation and a family, I would, because we have agreed upon it, I would give that particular space, is what you are saying.
Yeah, and it's not just, I don't want to give the timeout just because we've agreed on it. I give the
Mm-hmm.
timeout because I recognize that getting the timeout is what's most supportive for you in this moment. And
Mm-hmm.
in any charged conversation, it's important, as much as I want to put myself, my needs forward, it's also about recognizing, acknowledging, and considering your needs. Because if I continue to say, actually, I don't care how you feel right now, I'm going to keep talking, it's going to, lead to disconnection rather than having us come closer together, rather than us
Mm-hmm.
connecting. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really about care in that sense, to say, okay, is that what you need in this moment? And recognizing that perhaps the self connection, this 10-minute walk that you're asking for, will perhaps help you to be more present when we continue to have the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's in my interest too to offer you this time out. And it's not just because I've agreed on a particular day to do this. Yeah.
Okay. Let's switch to the professional world of this. Now, in the family world, I have that care to nurture my family. I am deeply involved in it. And I want that to happen. And it is going to be a long term thing, maybe 50, 60 years. So I want that to happen. But in a professional world, I might say, I'm a CTO, I don't care how you feel. I want my job to be done because the customers are on me, the CEO is on me, the board is on me. So I don't care how you feel. How can we bring that in? Have you worked with corporates in bringing this in? And how does that work in the corporate world?
Um, I think one of the things that has been believed in the corporate world, and though that's changing right now, is this idea that you leave your emotions out of the workplace. And
Mm,
I'm very glad to see that. I think in the last 10 years or so, especially in the last few years, particularly, there's more and more conversations about how we need to bring our whole selves into the workplace.
mm,
And this is because, I mean, I can say, I don't care how I feel, I'm going to plow through with my work, or I don't care how you
mm,
feel, you better do what I'm asking you to do. But we know that any emotion that's suppressed, that's not
mm,
addressed in any way, is going to leak out somewhere or the other. So I think I mean, while it's great to imagine that we're machines that will keep moving without emotional connect to what we're doing, that's just not how we are as human beings. And here's the
mm,
thing: once once we're able to address people's emotions, once we're able to receive them, once we show, and when we do this, it establishes connection and trust. It really
mm,
establishes a lot of trust, and the other person has a sense, wow, this person cares about me. They're not just talking to me because I am XYZ doing a particular job. They actually do care about me. And once
mm,
we have that quality of connection, I think there's a greater amount of investment in any work that I'm doing. If I'm looking back at my own experiences of being in teams where you know I didn't have a sense that I mattered, I didn't have a sense that I was being seen as a human being, are teams where I felt really like, do I want to continue doing this work? And teams where I've had a sense of, wow, we want to hear what you have to say. Are you okay? These kinds of forms of connection, which are beyond this task that I'm assigned to do, are teams where I've always had a sense of, there's so much care here, and I want to contribute to this team.
mm,
Yeah?
mm.
I don't know if that's been your experience, but it's been mine, and I hear from other people that that's how they experience it too. So in that, yeah.
Very, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you on that, in the sense that when I feel, first of all, the work that I'm doing means something, there is a meaning into it. It is not just I'm servicing somebody's greed and the need, but it has a meaning. I will put my heart and soul into it. Second, the people around me, they hear me, they talk to me, and they hear my opinions and ideas, and some of them are incorporated into back into the work, and I matter.
Yeah.
When those feelings are kindled in me, My work is joyful, and when I'm joyful, I give the best of it.
Absolutely.
uh, I am not, as you said, I am not approaching it as a machine. I am approaching it as a human, and I bring my human intellect and human support for the other team members, and then we all work as together. So I really get the point that you are talking about in that. As we move more into digital, see, at least when I'm seeing you face to face and in person, I'm seeing you, I can see a lot of cues that I'm making you uncomfortable in my talk, or you are feeling something not right. I can sense that. But in a digital world, I may not be able to sense all of those aspects of it. How do we bring this non-violent communication principles to a digital world?
The first thing is to recognize the ways in which digital is unlikely to measure up to face interactions and to
Mm.
acknowledge it. Because it's really, I think, sitting across each other, there's a certain warmth and there's a certain connection that we experience. And through the computer screen, it's much harder. It takes a lot longer to strike that rapport. And
Yeah.
so that's something I think is important to acknowledge, to say, not to kind of have this, I need to recreate the same quality of connection, because that's not going to be possible in some way.
Mm.
The other might be just to, I think, especially when we're talking about being at work, I think now is the time to really spend time before meetings, for example, to
Mm.
just to be able to check in with each other outside of the jobs that we're doing, or to just say, how are you doing? So I think it's important for us, especially during this time when all of us are experiencing a period in our lives that's so different from anything else that we've experienced, to take some time off work even before we begin our meetings, maybe to spend a little time with an informal catch up. How's everyone
Mm.
doing? Is there something that you'd like to share with the team? And this could happen one on one. This could happen, if you're a manager who's holding a meeting for their team, this could happen there as well. So just the idea is to make a space where people trust that it's okay to bring in anything that they want to share. So I like to compare it a little bit like making tiny deposits into a piggy bank, right?
Mm.
So every single small action like this that you do adds to the trust that somebody can, somebody has this sense of trust that, you know what, that's my manager, and I'm struggling right now, and it's okay to talk to them. um,
Mm.
and I think that becomes important, because in the absence of a lot of cues, I think we need to be a bit more proactive in letting people know that if there's something that they want to share, we are open, or we are here to listen to them. That's something that can be done for sure.
Yeah. And as you say this, I think every time there's a new technology that comes in, I think our own actions and the psychology and all of that will have to change as well. How we do business, all of that will have to change. And only then we will be able to adapt and succeed in that particular new technology environment. And I think this is one thing that we should learn. So we have talked about family, we have talked about corporate. As a conscious citizen, how can we apply this, especially when the other party is kind of either feels offended and feels that they are a victim, or they feel that they are at the receiving side of all of this. So how can we have this kind of a conversation? Because in a larger environment, at least in a family, I can have those agreements, we can talk about those agreements. In a corporate world, we could somehow manage to have those agreements, but in a wider society, how can we apply this? And are there any examples that Marshall has applied this in a larger societal context?
Yeah, so there are different NVC practitioners and trainers who are doing this work, taking this work to larger societal, to address larger societal issues. I can name a couple that come to mind. I
Mhm.
know of
Mhm.
multiple practitioners and trainers who worked with people in prison, and
Mm.
supporting them to really understand their emotions and to get more conscious about their needs, and an awareness of, now that you're aware of your needs, what would you like to do?
Mm.
And there's something called restorative circles, which was a framework that's based on that kind of, comes from NVC, so to say, that was created by someone called Dominic Barter, who was living in Brazil, who still lives in Brazil and continues to practice there, which is really a way of reimagining the justice system. Like, what if
Mm.
your community were able to take up a justice system, a way of addressing harm in a way that restores trust and connection? And this is really about taking responsibility for our actions and being able to hear each other, because that's something that's missing in our traditional justice system, right? In
Very
the
true.
traditional justice system, there's a perpetrator and there's a victim. But here, there's actually, if we as a community can sit together and listen to each other, how has what has happened impacted you? What has been your role in what you did? And what would we like as a community? What actions would we like to see going forward? This can be very powerful, because if you think of it that way, do punishments really work the way we think they do? Is sending someone to jail going to make our society safer? Would it rather be safer to really recognize where the problem comes from, maybe have that person take some accountability for what they did, and create ways in which, we as a society can be safer as a whole? So that's another example. Closer home, a few of us, some of my colleagues and I run something called the Living Bridges Project, which is
Mm-hmm.
about bringing nonviolent communication to the social space. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so these can be, the applications are many, including things like how do we listen to each other when we disagree with each other, something that happens so little of on Twitter, especially, or on other social media platforms. How do we bring this into social change work itself, into understanding where we are and what we want to do in the space of social change? So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of exciting projects across the world that bring nonviolent communication into, to address societal issues. And yeah, I'm excited to see how that pans out in the next few years.
Hope so. Hope so. It brings in a quite a bit of a change. I see across nations, not just in India, that these kinds of disagreements are popping out and marginalizing a lot of people, and some of the good intended people also, they are shying away from having these kinds of a conversation. So if they are aware of, hey, there is a framework, there is something that we can act upon, and probably at least they will take small steps towards bridging that particular thing. And I think that's a right phrase that you have for your project, Living Bridges. So that's a good one, Ranchita. uh, okay, so this particular thing, as a leader, I can bring in some of these changes. Say, for example, I'm one of the employees and I got exposed to this nonviolent communication. How can I bring this change upwards?
I'd say the best way to bring change upwards is to integrate it, because
Mm-hmm.
when you start, uh, communicating and relating to people differently, they're going to notice.
Mm.
And it could be as simple as, how can I move from reaction to response the next time a very stressful situation happens? How can I
Mm.
model the giving of feedback in a way that holds a lot of empathy and compassion for the other person? Because very often we don't really learn how to give feedback, so we give feedback by saying you're good or you're bad. But what does it
Mm.
really mean to give feedback that's both constructive and caring at the same time?
Mm.
And to do some of these, like to find what sphere of influence you have within your organization and to bring this into that. For example, maybe you run meetings. What can you bring in from the NVC framework that can help you run your meetings in a way that's more efficient and in a way that hears all voices? you know
Mm.
can you introduce a short check-in at the beginning of the meeting, because people will
Mm.
have a sense of, wow, that felt different. you know can you improve your tracking skills, because in our meetings we very often move from one topic to the other and one is left unresolved.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's something like, it's sort of like, if I were to make the NVC analogy, it's about tracking whose needs are on the table. And we move on to
Mm.
another need once we've addressed the first one. And again, in the NVC framework, we talk about requests. Once we've identified a need, can we move into a next action? Can we identify a next action before we move into the meeting? Can we be sure that it's communicated with clarity and specificity? And these are all things that can be very supportive in the corporate world. And if you were to kind of look at your sphere of influence in the organization and see what you can do with it, my guess is that there's going to be a ripple effect. People are going to talk about how this meeting was very different from other meetings I attended, and it's going to get
True.
noticed sooner rather than later. Or you can
Very true.
just say, hey, you know what? I discovered something new and I'd love for all of us to learn it together and share it with your, I don't know, CEO, VP, whoever, has the decision
Yeah.
making capacity in your organization.
Yeah. When you said that, I remembered one incident that happened in my office. So I was a new CTO, and there was a member called Akash, and he's a very senior member. And I was giving feedback on a document, and I kept on saying, "This is not sufficient. Something needs to improve. This has to be better." And there was a revision of once, second time, third time. He said, "Joseph, I have done everything that I can do. If you want me to improve this, you need to be specific."
Mm.
And obviously, when I heard it for the first time, I was shocked, and it was also in public, so I was little shocked and probably a little angry as well. But that had a point, and since then I have changed my attitude and changed my way of giving feedback. I've tried to give as specific feedback as possible to improve, and that has changed quite a lot. And I believe that is a demonstration of whatever that you were talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know whether Akash knew uh, non-violent communication or not, but that was an exhibition of that principle. He said, "Hey, I have done whatever I can do. Now you need to be specific." So he demonstrated that feeling, that need, that request. And once it was demonstrated, I was able to carry on from there. So I think that was a good example that I have in my mind about nonviolent communication.
And here's the thing about specificity. It can be very powerful to offer specificity, not
Hmm.
just for feedback where there's room for improvement, but also when we're offering feedback about something that's gone well. So when
Hmm.
I'm offering appreciation, if I can be very specific, the other person is able to understand what is it about my performance that this person really liked. And so that also bringing our specificity to that space, and this is what we in the NVC framework is called the observation. Like, what did the other person do or say? What actually happened? And that gives context to the other person to understand what we're talking about.
True, very true. Uh, Ranjita, when we are observing, when we are empathizing with the others, and you also talked about building bridges. How can I keep my identity intact, but also build bridges to the other party? How can I do that? Is it possible to do it?
It's certainly possible and it takes practice.
Hmm.
So often, for many of us, the idea of empathy means I'm going to agree with anything that you say.
Hmm.
Or I'm so, and we talk about people who are nice and people who are kind.
Mhm.
And kind people are often people who say yes to everything we ask them, correct? So it's about understanding this. I think this idea of empathy is flawed in some sense when we equate empathy to being endlessly available, um,
Hmm.
agreeable to other people. Empathy means, yes, I see you, I hear you, I acknowledge what you're experiencing, and I'm also aware at the same time that I have certain feelings and needs.
Hmm.
So I think this, one of the things, I think this quote that stays with me very powerfully is this idea that your compassion isn't complete unless it includes yourself. And very
Hmm.
often, for many of us, when we think of ideas like empathy and compassion, it's easier to say, I need to be empathetic to other people. But it's equally, the practice of NVC equally tells me to honor my needs, to know that my needs matter, and to learn to say no sometimes. You know, saying no doesn't make me less empathetic. I can i can be empathetic, I can listen to you with all my heart, and I can say no because there's
Hmm.
something that's not working for me in this situation. So it's about really recognizing that, because I think it takes a while, given how we've
Hmm.
all been hearing about the ideas of empathy and compassion. and to start exercising that no muscle. I need to practice saying no.
What kind of coaching you offer?
If you go to an NVC workshop, you'll learn the principles, you'll start to apply them, and then, but you've gone to the NVC workshop. The rest of the world hasn't. So the rest of the world
Mm-hmm.
is still in that, what you would maybe call a non-NVC space. And then you go back to the world and you recognize, wow, it's harder to do it in back home than it is to do it in the workshop where everyone's agreed to practice this. Um, so this requires a lot of integration, and there are resources. There are several workshops now that many things have moved online. There are several workshops and practice groups for people who want to continue integrating this. A practice group, and I offer one, is essentially a space where somebody who has some exposure to NVC comes to continue building on their practice in community. And that makes such a huge difference, to know that there are other people who are also attempting to live in this new and very radical way of engaging with ourselves and other people. Um, so there are practice groups around the world, many of which are online now. So for anybody who's interested, could look them up once you, yeah, you could look them up. And as far as coaching goes, I offer different kinds of coaching. One is deep listening, which is about, sometimes we want to be heard, and it's we want to be heard in a way that doesn't give us advice, doesn't give us solutions, but that actually helps us get more clarity about our own experience. So deep listening is one of the kinds of sessions I offer. Um, the other is for people who begun learning NVC, and if they've sort of recognized ways, specific areas in which they want to grow their practice, that's something I offer also. That will be a sustained
Okay.
engagement. And for anybody else who's struggling with something and who doesn't necessarily want to go to an NVC workshop, but would like to understand how these principles can be brought into either the specific situation they're working with, like, for example, somebody might say, I'm having this struggle at work, or somebody might come to me with a more generic request, like, I have trouble saying no, and then to work on that particular area. So these are the different kinds of one-on-one work that I offer. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll put all of these in the show notes. And a couple of last questions, Ranjita.
Yes.
You would have worked with quite a lot of leaders. What are the great qualities of some of the leaders that you admire?
Um, I'm going to, for me, what really, when you talk about great qualities of leaders that I admire, I think it's really about leaders who can relate with you at a human to human level, no matter how high up they are in the hierarchy. The willingness to be vulnerable and to receive others'
Mm,
vulnerability. And yeah, I think these are a couple of things that really stand out for me in terms of, and also a leader who can in some way convey that you matter, that you're way beyond one of many 100,000 employees in my organization. But when it comes to one-on-one conversations or connects, can they convey to you that you matter as a human being?
thank you. And what's the kindest thing anybody has done for you?
Oh, how, I mean, so many. How can I think of? Uh, I so this is not about one person, but earlier this year I had COVID, and I think in I had a mini community that sort of checked in with me, constantly was checking, are you okay? Do you need anything? Do you want us to do something? There were times when I was a little worried, a little panicky, and then they said, no, we can talk. There were people who were like getting in touch with me every day to say, how's your temperature? How are your oxygen readings doing today? And I think for me, this quality of care, that
Mm,
care of knowing that I'm isolated and yet I'm not alone, that's really something that's been very, very deeply moving for me. Um, some of these people were sitting very, very far away from where I was. And so often we have in our heads, or at least I do sometimes, the idea of supporting looks a certain way, but it can happen in
Mm.
so many ways. And to be supported in that way when I was quite low physically, emotionally, has meant a lot to me. And I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you, Ranjita. Where can people find you online?
They can find me on my website, that's connectcoaching.com, and maybe you could put the link out there. I'm
Yeah.
also on Instagram. You can look me up, Connects Coaching. My handle is at Connects Coaching. I also have a LinkedIn page, again, Connects Coaching, and Facebook page as well. So you can connect with me on any of these spaces. Instagram is the one where I'm more active right now. So if you want to get a sense of what NVC is and a little bit of the work I do, I'd say please go there because you'll see bite sized nuggets of the work that I do around there.
I will put all of those things in the show notes, Ranjita. Ranjita, one of my guests said the greatest gift somebody can give is their pure attention. For the last 1 year, 1 hour or so, you have done that. And I thank you very much for it. Not only the attention, but you also shared your learning with me. And I'm extremely grateful for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation too. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Ranjita. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Please share what you liked in our conversation on social media and tag us. Have a life of wins.